Winterizing the chicken coop is a top priority today. We've already gotten one snowstorm. Thankfully it has since melted, but there's another one on its way. And here in northern Minnesota, we have to get pretty crafty about helping our chickens through the winter. We can get down to negative 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Our winters are long. We're talking 6 months long, and we get a lot of snow. And so I have a few unique things that we do to winterize this place that you might find interesting, that you might not see other places. I also have some tips for you of things that we learned the hard way, so hopefully you don't have to learn them the hard way as well. And then I have a unique new challenge in the coop that I'm gonna need Ryan's help, hopefully, to help me solve that one. So we have a few steps ahead of us. Let's go ahead and get started. I would say that the most important step of all of the winterizing is eliminating drafts, because chickens can tolerate pretty cool temperatures as long as the air is still and they're not getting that cold wind just kind of like beating on them. And so the first thing I'm going to do is partially cover up all of my windows with some polycarbonate here. These have been open all summer for some good cross ventilation, but we don't want that cross ventilation anymore. But the key is to not cover up those windows entirely, because you still want some ventilation so that all the moisture that gets stuck in the coop from their poop and them breathing can escape. Otherwise you'll get frostbite. So there is a sweet spot. So I'll give you an idea of what I'm talking about here. I love these gloves, but I have no dexterity in them, so just have to take them off for a minute. So here's our window, and I am going to be installing it about here. So there's going to be about an inch gap at the top, and you want the gap at the top because that's where moisture is going to come out, because heat rises. Am I making you nervous? You'll thank me later. And I knocked my mic off. We're doing really good here. Last one. All right, position this one about the same. And then the third window is definitely the most important one. And that's because this window is right above the roosting bars. So the chickens are sitting right here. The draft is just going to be dumping right onto them. And because of that, I'm actually covering this entire window, and that's okay because I have ventilation holes up here. So these are just dryer vents that we got from Menards. I'll put the link in the description, but these are awesome. That way it lets the moisture come out of the coop without drafts coming in. Why don't you lay your egg and be done with it, huh? So it's already feeling a whole lot better in the coop. It's amazing what just those little pieces of plastic can do to keep the drafts down. So next we need to talk about frozen eggs. There's nothing more frustrating than going out to the coop and realizing that all of the eggs have frozen. And the problem with frozen eggs is not only does the texture change a little bit, the yolk gets super high and it's just kind of weird to cook with, but they can be unsafe. So if they get so frozen that they crack, so the shell will split and then the innards of the egg is exposed to the outside environment, those are no longer safe to eat. So you have to throw them all away, and there's nothing worse than that. And that was a big problem for me when I was still working at the hospital. I wasn't there throughout the day to run out there every couple of hours to get eggs. And so I had to get creative about how to prevent frozen eggs. So I'll show you that next. So what I like to use, they're all bent up at the moment because they were stuffed in my garden shed and then they got cold. So they'll ease up as they warm up. But these are heated seedling mats. So these are perfect for sitting inside the nests as long as you make the proper modifications. So I actually have a whole YouTube video showing how I did this. I'll make sure to link it in the description, but I'll give you a peek at kind of my setup now. So these are my very basic nesting boxes. Sorry, honey. I know. I used to have this amazing Best Nest Box rollaway nest, and I loved it, but the chickens hated it. So I've since moved to just these basic boxes. They're working great. But you're likely wondering how we're gonna fit these into the nesting boxes, and you probably have that concern as well. So no matter what design you have, the nesting area is generally about the same. And so what I figured out is that 2 of these fits about 3 nesting boxes. So last year I went through and I cut these slits, and so I can kind of feed it through. So we're gonna have to start by, oh no. It's still good. Emptying these out. And I know there's a couple hens waiting for me, so to do this quickly. And then just feed this in. There we go. And the other key is having a hole on the outside so the plug can come out. There we go. That one's together. And there we go. Fits like a glove. Someone's waiting patiently or impatiently for me to be done. It's back in there. Oh, and the most important part, we should plug it in. And if you don't have power in your coop, you can just run an extension out. And honestly, that's what we do. Our extension cord comes all the way from the cabin. I know, honey. I know, honey. I'm almost out of here. It'll be nice and warm. I'll grab eggs while I'm here. What do you think? Is that good? So next we need to figure out water in the coop. So that was probably the hardest thing for Ryan and I to figure out as far as how to keep water from freezing out at the coop. It took us years and we went through so many different designs. We started with just your basic light bulb in a cinder block that was recommended in my chicken book, and I'm sure that works in a lot of climates, but here when it gets down to -35, oh no, that is not gonna work. I also tried sewing like a sleeve for a heated pad or a heated blanket to wrap around one of my waterers, and that kind of worked for a while, but it wasn't great. And then we finally discovered heated dog bowls. Those are the way to go, but not all of them are created equal. I started with the heated dog bowl brand that they just had at my local feed store, and it shorted out immediately, or not immediately, but after a month or two. And winter is long and they're like 20, 30 bucks a pop, and I was like, oh, this isn't working. And so I searched around and I found a different brand. This one's just on Amazon, and that one's been great. We've been using it for years, and they do eventually short out after a few years, but they last much longer. So I'll show you my little setup. So here they are. I just like to prop it up on a couple of bricks to try to keep them a little cleaner. This one's getting a little dirty, so I want to show you my easy way to clean them up. I just keep a brush out here hanging, and I can just do a little this action, and then just kind of keep a dedicated corner. This will eventually become block ice and whatever else, but that's fine. It'll melt in the spring. And now we have a cleaned out tub, and I just keep my jugs from white vinegar. These make great for a gallon of water, and I just bring them out from the house whenever I need to top them off. And this system is so easy for me. I actually just kind of leave it up all summer. I just don't plug it in. And so today is going to be an easy step. All I have to do is just plug them in into our outlet here. And again, if you don't have power wired into your coop, you can just string a extension cord over. That's what I did in the very beginning. And I'm sure you're interested in which exact dog bowl that is, so I'll make sure to link it in the description if you'd like to add one or two to your coop this fall. Now, before we jump to the big job that I've been dragging my feet on doing, let's talk about heat for a minute. So I am in the no heat camp unless it's really, really cold. So we're talking -20. Chickens are very adaptable, and the last thing you want to do is try to keep the coop above freezing, and then the power goes out and all of a sudden the temperature plummets and your chickens haven't adapted to those negative degrees and they could die. And so that's just too much of a risk for me. Plus, it's a waste of energy. It's not necessary. It's potentially a fire risk if you're using a heat lamp, and ultimately the chickens will be fine if it's below freezing, below zero even. But again, once it hits -20, I do tend to turn the heat on. That's probably more for me than it is for them, especially if your coop is insulated. We should probably talk about insulation, and there's no drafts. But as far as what type of heat to use, I like radiant heat plates. They're energy efficient and very low fire risk compared to heat lamps. So I'll give you a peek at how I have them set up. Okay, so I have two of them. I have one here and one here. I thought that would be kind of the best spot because they only really need heat at night because that's when it's coldest, and then they'll be here on the roosting bars. And I didn't want it so close that maybe they could burn themselves on it, so I felt like that was some pretty good spacing, and they're not plugged in. I actually didn't have to use them at all last year because we didn't even get to -20. It was such a mild winter, which was weird, but we'll see. Hopefully we'll get a real winter this year. These are both from Chick Cozy, but this is their brand new model that just got released, where this is their model from last year. So if you got one last year, it probably looks like this. But their new model is pretty sweet. It has this nice little adjustment knob, so you can actually choose what temperature you want, and it'll auto adjust based on the temperature of your room. So if there's a cold snap or if it warms up for a while, it'll auto adjust instead of just cranking out all the time. And then what's really neat is that there are these grooves here for legs, so you can turn this into a brooder heat plate in the spring. So love this so much. We'll see how much I have to end up using it this winter. I'll make sure to also link this in the description. And then for insulation, so I have a whole YouTube video where we put the insulation in, so I'll make sure to link this in the description if you want to see the process. But here you can see kind of some of the exposed insulation. We just used some styrofoam board. It was inexpensive, easy to just kind of cut to fit, but then we covered most of it around here with this 1/8 inch panel board to keep the chickens from pecking at it, because you can actually see I ended up moving the brooder over here finally. It took me months to do that, but now they can jump up on here, and look, they've already like destroyed this little corner. So thanks, chickens. They just, for some whatever reason, love pecking at it. So if you plan to use that kind of insulation, also have a plan to cover it. Okay, let's go ahead and do the not fun chore. It'd be a whole lot easier if Ryan were here. He had to leave on a work trip, so it's just me today. We'll see if we can get it done together. So that is covering the run. So I'm a huge fan of covered runs. So here you can see we have a nice roof on here, so that keeps the snow out and the rain out from above. But around here we get blowing snow and it'll come in sideways. And so being able to wrap the run with plastic is really gonna help keep not only the drafts out of the run so that the chickens enjoy being out there, but it also cuts the wind down quite a bit. So the wind chill factor is a whole lot more comfortable in the run. And then thirdly, the plastic creates kind of like a greenhouse effect. And so it's actually really quite comfortable in the run, even if it's a really cold day. But I do have my lovely helpers here, so we'll see. You gonna help me? And I'm gonna do my best to keep them nearby because deer season starts in a couple of days, and I've been trying to keep them kind of exercised. We're doing our best to get your wiggles out, but not going far on the trails. We don't want to spook the deer or anything. So try and keep an eye on these guys while we work on our next project. Do you promise to stay here and not run off and spook the deer? Can you do that for me? Thank you. And my goal is to reuse the same plastic that we used last year. Not a huge fan of plastic in the first place, and so if I can at least reuse it instead of it going straight to trash, that would be good. So we'll see what we can do. Okay, so first I need to figure out which piece is for what side and which way it goes. Ugh. Definitely dirty. That is the negative of reusing it, but that's okay. It's a chicken coop. Okay. Come on, boys. They've already run off on me. Come on. They're used to being able to explore our whole property, and this whole like staying close to home is, come here. Thank you. Thanks for coming. You guys gotta stay here. I know you wanna run. I know. I'm sorry. Yeah, no deer for you. They're all for me, not for you. Oh, it's gonna be a long 3 weeks, especially once hunting season starts. We don't want them running around without supervision. You guys will get reflective vests too, just in case. Yeah, starting on Saturday. Here we go. Okay, so now I'm really having a challenge trying to figure out what is what side. I think that's right. Here. Yes, I think we did it. Okay. So we like to hold the plastic in place with furring strips. It's just a whole lot more secure, especially if you get wind. You just have to remember where they go. Okay, let's give this a whirl. This is going to be interesting by myself, but we're going to do it. I think, how do I want to start this? Okay. There. It's got to be right here. It's almost like a big puzzle when you're reusing it. First year's a lot easier, I feel like. We did it. And I don't like to cover the door. I like to let a little bit of fresh air exchange. Of course, it's all open here too, but I don't know. I like to be able to look in there. I guess that's probably my main reason. I can just come by and see what's going on, where this, a little bit of a visual block. Uh-oh, forgot to check on the dogs. Oh, hope they didn't run off again. Oh, they're just right over there. Excellent. By the way, GPS collars are the best. Highly recommend them. I can also put that in the description if you're interested. That was one of our biggest fears when we first moved in, is just how do we keep track of the dogs? How do we just not lose them? Because there's no one out here and just thousands of acres of wilderness. So that has absolutely saved the day more than once, that's for sure. Did it? I think so. I think we're doing it anyways. I think we're having good success here. Ryan will be so happy when he comes home and realizes he won't have to do this. Still have one more project I'll need his help with, so more to come. Okay, so I think that is looking pretty darn good. I'm happy with how it went up. I'm happy with the condition that the plastic is in. You can tell from the inside, it's just, you can feel it. I wish you guys could feel it. It's already cozier in here, having the windbreak, but you can still have the light come in, which is just great. So now we have to do it all over again on this side, but don't worry, I'll do it in fast forward for you guys for this side. Oh, what'd you guys find? Wow. Glad you're keeping busy. Those dogs crack me up. So Ryan's gonna be back tomorrow so we can pick up on the last step to finish up this winterization. Catch you in the morning. So a lot has changed in the last few days. I was hoping to get Ryan in to finish this last step, but he ended up getting home late, like midnight on Friday night, and then Saturday morning we were up at 5:30 in the morning because deer season started. We filled both of our tags, so we've been busy with that, and now it's multiple days later and we're on to the next project. If you remember, we're building Ryan's big new shop up by our build site, and the insulation guy stopped by this weekend and they're gonna start in a couple of days. And so that means we have a lot of work ahead of us to get the rest of the ceiling finished so that they can get the spray foam done. So with that, the last step is on the back burner. We're not gonna be getting super cold yet, so it's not absolutely urgent, but I thought I would at least show you guys what we plan on doing to kind of solve our issue that we've been having. So we built this amazing run, and this summer the chickens realized that they love roosting up on these just kind of support beams or whatever. There's probably an official word for it. You can see it, there's just like poop all over this because this is where they have been sleeping for months, which hasn't bothered me one bit in the warmer months. Sure, I don't blame them, honestly. I'd want to be out here where there's lots of fresh air and it's nice and cool and everything. But now that it's getting cooler, I have two concerns. Number one is the obvious. It's going to be a whole lot warmer inside the coop because it's insulated and it's less drafty. There are still, you know, those open spots up top, and then the heat is just going to escape out of here. And then the other thing I had to learn the hard way when we first started raising chickens, and that is the size of the roosting bars. So these are 2x4s that are up on their side, and the width of this is the width that most people use for the roosting bars, and what I used based off of what my chicken book told me to use, which are 2x2s. And to be honest, chickens like that better because they can get a good grip. It's more stable for them. But when you have really cold weather, that is a recipe for frostbitten toes because their toes kind of dangle down outside of their feathers and they get cold. So I'll show you what I use inside the coop. So here we are using 2x4s, but flat side down. So now their foot is going to be completely flat and covered by their feathers. So if you get really cold temperatures, highly recommend doing 2x4s flat side ups. So I think our best option is going to be putting chicken wire underneath here. That's what we had in our old coop at the Poultry Palace, and we never had this issue. So we left it open for a year and we've learned our lesson, and we just need to block them off. So that'll be pretty easy. I also don't even know if we have enough chicken wire on hand to get this part done. I'm definitely feeling a little unprepared for this last step, but hopefully in the next week or two, especially if it looks like it's going to be dipping down the single digits, it's time to start forcing them indoors. Of course, I can manually grab them off the beams here and move them one by one inside the coop, but that is not my preferred method. I'm kind of worried that they're just gonna move to the roosting bars here. So these are the roosting bars that they were using to roost in their temporary coop when we were first building this place, and it worked really well. And then when we built this run, I just had the idea to throw it in here, and it's been awesome. The chickens love it. They hang around on that, especially in the winter, because then they can like keep their feet warm but still enjoy some sunshine and everything. So I'm hoping I don't have to take this out if they decide, instead of sleeping up here, just sleeping there instead of actually going into the coop. So we'll see what happens. What are you gonna do, sir? You tell me. Are you gonna behave? Probably not. Actually, he's been doing good. He's been sleeping in the coop. There are a few that are smart enough to go in there. So good job, sir. And then the very last thing we need to consider, I'm probably not going to do it until December or so, is adding light to a coop. So if you're new to chickens, you might not know that chickens need 14 hours of daylight in order to lay efficiently. And right now we have very short daylight hours, and so I'm not getting very many eggs. Plus they're molting, so that doesn't help either. But adding a light to the coop on a timer to kind of extend the daylight hours really is a great way to keep their laying going. But that is kind of a controversial topic. Some people are in the no light ever camp, and I totally get that because they want to give their chickens a rest. It's a natural thing, right? They're supposed to kind of have a rest period. That's how their nature is built in, where other people, they are on the light immediately and keep it on until there's 14 hours of daylight again in the spring, just to keep production going, because if they're not laying, you're just spending a lot of money on feed. So I totally get that too. I'm somewhere in the middle camp, where I leave the light off in the fall, and then somewhere around December, I kick it on to kind of get them going again. And I found that that is not only a good kind of middle camp, but also I did in my early years try to turn on a light early on in the fall. And that was a recipe for disaster, because what I did then is I ended up delaying their molt. So you have to constantly be adjusting the light as the days keep getting shorter. And if you aren't constantly adjusting it, eventually their body figures out that daylight is getting shorter, and then they end up molting in December when it's really cold and they have no feathers, and that is not a good thing to do. So I just leave it off, leave it alone, let them go through their molt, do their thing, and then usually around December, I turn the light on the timer. And when we're talking about light, there are two key things to think about. So one is you want the light to come on in the morning, not in the evening. So you want to kind of work with their circadian rhythm in a way, because if they're out foraging and they can tell that the sun is setting and then they go in the coop and the light is on, like that's just, nobody likes that. So you want it on in the morning. The other key thing is make your adjustments gradually. So let's say December comes around and I'm ready to turn my light on. I don't automatically get it set to go on at 2 a.m. to go straight to 14 hours. You want to gradually, slowly build them up to that. So I think that's it for winterizing the coop until we actually get around to the light and hopefully putting the chicken wire up. Hopefully next week we'll be through kind of the hurdle of the whole insulation part, and then we can move back to finishing the winterization. One last thing I wanted to let you guys know about, if you don't know about it already, is I have an ultimate homestead planner that I've created for 2025. I've been putting it out every year for the last 3 years now, and it is the bomb. It is the key thing that keeps me organized and keeping track of like inventory of all of my ferments and canned goods and flock records and incubation records, and there's even finance sheets and egg tallies and you name it. It's over 200 pages long. I'll link it in the description if you're interested in getting your own copy. I just love that thing. I would feel so lost without it. So definitely check it out. Thanks again so much for being here. I so appreciate you guys' support. It's been really fun sharing everything with you guys. Make sure to ask if you have any questions in the comments. I love hearing from you guys. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll catch you on the next video.